Welcome once again to another exciting episode of OCDTV. I'm your host, Keith Martin, alongside Jameson Horton and Maxie Davidson from the New Classics Company. Today we're going to be talking about our guilty pleasures via cinema, television, and books and comics. First things first, though, we need to determine what a guilty pleasure actually is. So, my definition of a guilty pleasure is something that you might not want everyone to know that you really like.
Right. Something shameful.
I would, not shameful. Not going to go there. But not necessarily shameful, but just kind of like,
You don't want to.
I'm a little embarrassed that I kind of like, musical theater. That sort of thing.
I see. Okay.
So,
So it's a subjective thing.
yes, it's very subjective because some people might not be embarrassed by it. But so today we're just kind of going to go off of the things that we think that other people might think is a little weird for us to like. So first thing we're going to start with is cinema, movies. Personally, my guilty pleasure, I'm wearing it, is Godzilla, old Godzilla movies. Mainly the Showa period, which is like the 50s and 60s and 70s, ending with Terror of Mechagodzilla in 1974. See, that's why I'm a guilty pleasure, because I'm a total nerd and I knew that.
Showa is named after the emperor at the time.
Yes,
correct?
and that's how Japan kind of categorizes periods of movies, basically by the reigning emperor at the time, even though they kind of changed that convention a little bit with Godzilla after the Heisei period. They did Millennium, and then the current period, I forget what they call it now. But I'm going to go even a little deeper to the guilty pleasure of the Godzilla movies and talk about one that's pretty universally despised by most of fandom. Is here in the United States, it was released as Godzilla's Revenge, an uplifting tale of a young boy being bullied by mean bullies, of course, and he daydreams of going to Monster Island and meeting the son of Godzilla, Mina, or Manila, depending upon how you want to pronounce it, and they get into all kinds of weird little adventures on Monster Island. And he teaches him how to stand up for himself against the bullies, because on Monster Island, Minya also has a bully named Gabra.
And Gabra is what kind of kaiju?
He's just a big monster. I don't know.
Okay.
He's nothing special. He's Gabra. The only thing he ever appears in is Godzilla's Revenge. They probably just found a suit in the back lot somewhere and say, "Hey, put this on." So and then back in the real world, he's also dealing with these criminals who are like trying to kidnap him, and he's in an abandoned house, and it's basically the whole movie's all stock footage. It's not really not very good.
Toho just wanted to push a film out there.
Yeah, they just said, hey, it's a cash grab for Toho, and they say so it's like all the monster fights are just stock footage from other Godzilla movies. And they shot some human stuff around it. But my 9-year-old self loved it. It was on Creature Double Feature like every other week.
I remember
and it has a little spot right here.
Yeah, that whole series of Godzilla movies is unique because they got progressively sillier.
Yes.
As they went on, and it's
But
just
then they kind of came back in a little bit though with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla in particular.
But it's interesting how the first movie is like a horror movie or like a disaster movie.
Yeah.
And then Godzilla went from being a fearful force of nature or metaphor to like the savior of mankind.
Right.
And right, like this friend of Earth.
Right. As the tropes kind of changed, where they went from Godzilla being a metaphor for the atomic bomb to fighting off aliens and weirdness.
And they're just fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's obvious that they're just people in suits, doing all these stunts and crashing through
watch your
model
mouth.
buildings. But it's just fun. No, I love them for what they are.
Special effects by Billy.
Never for a moment do you buy
So,
that they're like hundreds of feet
That is my cinema guilty pleasure.
tall. Yeah, excellent. So I guess the one I chose is a little-known 1982 action film by a director named Hal Needham, who got his claim to fame by directing Smokey and the Bandit and Cannonball Run. And he thought,
Cannonball Run's wonderful. I
yes.
love that movie.
No, those are good films. This is the film that I like. So he thought, what if I made a fun, militaristic, non-violent war film with specialized soldiers wearing spandex uniforms and driving a variety of futuristic cars and motorcycles and trucks. And
So it's like a live-action Mask.
yes, and the result was Megaforce. Well, people usually draw comparisons between this and G.I. Joe, but as we were talking before on the group chat, that these two franchises actually came out the same year, the Larry Hama comic books and Megaforce in June of 1982. Megaforce was fun, and it made a lasting impression on a 10-year-old Jamie, who bought all of the Hot Wheels and had all sorts of adventures in his backyard.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll have to tell you, I've never seen it.
Oh, it's
I had
delightful.
never heard of it until the other day.
It's produced by Golden Harvest, a Hong Kong-based production company that made a lot of Jackie Chan movies, and also the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, the live-action one, and a bunch of schlock.
like Megaforce.
So yeah, I encourage you all to watch it. It's fun. Barry Bostwick is in it as a character named Ace Hunter.
Oh, Barry Bostwick. All right, you sold me.
Of Rocky Horror fame.
You sold me. I got to go see it now.
So it's just
The
a
Barry
lot of
Bostwick.
You got Maxie.
My guilty pleasure always is the Joel Schumacher gem, Batman and Robin.
the much maligned Bat film.
Oh, I love it so much. It's
Everybody chill.
that's partially why. So I remember seeing it when I was 9 in theaters with my parents and my sister, and I grew up watching the Adam West Batman and seeing
Which was awesome.
Which is awesome. He's still my favorite Batman, even though George Clooney and Michael Keaton as Batman. And
Not
when
a great
I saw
Batman. Oh, did I say George Clooney wasn't a great Batman? I did say
Stop
that, didn't I?
it. My part now, Keaton. But
I can interject. It's okay. I'm the host.
but I saw it in theaters, thought it was great, thought it was like colorful and wonderful, and I remember hearing people laughing in the theater at it, and I thought it was like, oh, they're just laughing at like the jokes and stuff.
They're
Didn't
laughing
realize
with it. They're laughing at
they're
it.
so laughing at it, and I didn't know that until I was older. And even then, when I was older, it just holds such a special place in my heart. There's so many bad jokes and beautiful puns involving ice that Arnold Schwarzenegger delivers beautifully.
I'll give him that. I will give him that.
So many puns, so many wonderful puns. Uma Thurman having a pseudo weird British accent as Poison Ivy out of nowhere. Alicia Silverstone's spilted acting and just action. And Mr. Freeze's henchmen were all professional hockey players randomly.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that he found professional hockey players in Gotham. And it's just such a fun movie, even though I know it's ridiculous and not good.
It goes down a little easier if you
With
realize.
Scotch? Oh, wait.
Yes, that too.
If you realize that it's more in line with the Greenway Productions, the Adam West.
Right, it's supposed to be super campy.
Silver Age
Yeah.
silliness of
Not
Batman.
the Christopher Nolan, like, where is he? Where's Harvey? You know, it's more like, kapow, pow, pow.
I will give you this.
Yes.
It is better than Batman
Forever.
Returns.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batman Returns is too weird. It's too creepy.
Yes.
It is, but
Yeah, and I'm not.
McDonald's definitely thought so.
Yes.
I mean, Batman Forever is pretty iffy too.
see,
Even though Tommy
like
Lee Jones is
Tommy Lee
Two-Face.
Jones is great, and
great.
I love the Riddler.
Yeah, Jim
Carrey
was
did
a
a great
great
job as the
Riddler.
Riddler. I mean, other than that, so that's kind of like a Batman movie. That's kind of like a bit of a guilty pleasure for me too. I
Yeah.
kind of like that one.
No, it is a good one.
It's well
And where
paced.
we first meet Robin
Yes.
Yeah. And then, yep.
and Val Kilmer as
Val
another
Kilmer.
great Batman.
Yeah, it's all right.
He was a great Batman. And we got Kiss from a Rose by Seal or Kiss by a Rose.
That's
yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
all these
Right.
films have great soundtracks.
Yeah,
Oh
they-
yeah,
yeah,
Smashing
they-
Pumpkins did
Yeah, they
Batman
do.
and Robin.
They all do have good music. Then we have, moving on a bit to television.
Oh.
There's a lot of shows, many shows that are subpar,
Oh, they are so subpar.
but you like them anyway. We have, for me, now I like a lot of the current TV superhero shows. Some are really good, some not so good.
Talking about the Arrowverse shows.
Arrowverse shows in particular.
Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Black Lightning. How many more
So
are
I
they
thought
up
those
to?
are all really good.
I think that's all. Some are good, better than others.
They have standout episodes or
Yeah.
standout seasons,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of filler.
Yeah, like Flash is great. Supergirl's okay. Arrow's pretty good. Legends of Tomorrow is wonderful.
Oh, okay.
But the show that I'm going to point out as a guilty pleasure, even though I'm about 4 seasons behind on it, is a little show about the Winchester boys called Supernatural.
I only watched 2 episodes of that.
Oh, it's so wonderful.
I know, I hear it's wonderful, and I need to watch more of it. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is their
Yeah.
father, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
I like Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
So what TV shows do you think are your guilty pleasure, Jamie?
I don't watch a lot of network shows. I suppose I could maybe put wrestling on there. The WWE,
Oh.
Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah, you actually stole my
And the
thunder. I forgot about
pay-per-views.
that.
Because it's
It is
such a bizarre, unique form of entertainment. Isn't sports entertainment?
Sports entertainment.
Yeah, it's like really violent theater. It's
Yes.
gladiatorial combat for a modern age. It's I don't know how else to describe it. It is professional wrestling.
I think my favorite part of that too, even though it has nothing to do with the actual wrestling, it's whenever they do the wrestling interviews and they say whatever to the interviewer and they're like,
promo.
I'm gonna get them, blah, 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 and they walk away and the interviewer's just
Cutting the promos and they're
like
like,
this
oh.
and they're always just stunned. And for some reason, that's my favorite part. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this information that Bailey just told me, huh?
Right.
But
It's presented.
Renee's the best at that.
The bizarre thing about wrestling is it's presented like it's really happening, and you just have to buy into it. I mean, we can
Right.
do that effortlessly with something like Arrow,
Yeah.
because it's shot like a drama.
Right.
You know, it's shot on film. It's directed like a movie.
Yeah, you have
but
to-
you're watching wrestling, and it's like
There's a lot of verisimilitude that has to go into that.
ooh, nice word.
Yes. Oh, I should get
Okay.
it. I gotta pull out my own dime. I yelled at
It's a lot
Jamie.
of big words.
I yelled at Jamie
take that
earlier
as
about big
disrespect.
10-cent words. Just pull out the dime, throw it on the table. That's a penny, but oh well.
Your 1 cent words.
Yeah, that's a 1 cent word. So yeah, the Renee is the best at the what just happened look.
They're just
that
so
or when
stunned.
or they're doing the interview and like all of a sudden the guy just comes up from behind the other guy and just smashes him and they're like ah!
So good.
No, yeah, wrestling is. Jamie reminded me. I might actually have to put that as my top guilty television pleasure because I watch it every week, and I watch all the pay-per-views. I'm a total sucker.
you follow the stories.
I follow all the stories. It's a soap opera
You're
for
sus-
men.
You suspend your
You know, my
disbelief.
mom used to watch her stories. You know.
Days of Our Lives.
And I got mine.
Bold and the Beautiful. I got my own Bold and the Beautiful.
That's right. It's the buff and the oily. Okay. But yeah, I mean, some of it's ridiculous. I mean, it's at least they've gone away from some of the more over-the-top ridiculousness of like the 90s. You know, the Attitude Era stuff that was just
They don't
really
need
over the
to
top.
push the boundaries of good taste to get
Right,
ratings. They
right.
they already won.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and
they've
so
got millions of people.
so now they
watching.
can actually try to get over with the actual in-ring product, which is nice because I enjoy that stuff. Maxie, what do you have for television?
Television guilty pleasures. Most of my television guilty pleasures are of the reality show variety, usually from MTV. Primarily
I see where you're going.
Jersey Shore.
Oh Jesus.
Oh no, not the Jersey Shore.
Oh, it is so addicting. I don't know why, because I mean, I grew up loving and watching Real World, so I actually have.
Home of the Miz.
I know.
That's right.
Speaking of which, and he has a new reality show too,
Yes.
Ms. and Mrs.
Ms. and Mrs. I've watched a couple episodes of that. Oh,
It's
did I?
really good.
No, it's on USA. It's on.
Oh, is it?
It's
Oh, I
on
thought it was
right
on
after
TV.
SmackDown. Oh, but I don't watch that
Shameless plug.
schlock. I don't watch that stuff. I have no idea when it's actually on.
But I grew up watching Real World, and then Real World got kind of like competition gamey, and it got weird. And so Jersey Shore came along, and you know, never thought that show would be
Don't forget
so
Road Rules.
successful. Yeah, Real World, Road Rules, I would also watch. But Jersey Shore, for some reason, just sucked me in, and there's no reason why I should like these people, but I love them, and I'm obsessed with them. And if there's a marathon on MTV of season 1 or 2 or the previous season, like that's my day. I will watch that. And I've become obsessed with that. There's another show on MTV called Buck Wild, which was about these kids in West Virginia who are like 20, 21 years old, who just like party all the time and like go dirt bike riding and do like crazy stuff. And I got suckered into that too. I don't know how it happened or why I care. I just do.
Do we have
Like-
MTV's Real World to blame for all
I
of
think
these shows?
so. That or like the Osbournes, I think was the first big reality show that I remember. Like that, like I remember it was mainly like Fear Factor, Survivor, and
I think
the Osbournes.
I think Survivor is probably the
the
one that really started the whole.
like people will watch people just
Do
being,
stuff,
Yeah,
right.
just sitting there. And then the Osbournes was the first major MTV show. Along, and then I think Real World was
Real World was before
Sorry, so
Osbournes.
Real World and then the Osbournes. But the whole thing of like following a family, because then Gene Simmons got his own reality
Yeah.
show eventually. Dee Snider got his own reality show.
They all did.
Jack and Ozzy have a reality
one
show,
now.
like road tripping around the world.
That one's fun. I've seen that.
And obviously,
Yeah, and
to kind of loop it back to wrestling a bit, Total Divas,
Total
Right.
Divas, the
and
Bellas.
Total Bellas.
The Total Bellas have their own show.
Just got renewed
and-
for another season.
They did.
How do you know this?
And yeah, the Ms. and Mrs. have their own reality show, and that is really, really good. And it makes
It's pretty
me,
funny.
And it makes me love the Miz even more.
I've always
'cause
loved-
he's such a
I mean, this is
Fun
probably
guy.
for my wrestling show, but The Miz is great.
He's a consummate heel.
Everything I love.
Such a company
He's a
guy,
company
too.
guy. He does anything they want, and he's great on the mic. His in-ring skills are good, not great, but they're good enough to get over, and he's just wonderful.
he's got personality.
Yeah, I'm saying his mic skills are probably one of the best in the company. I mean, it's hard. I can't really think of anyone else who's better on the mic than he is.
That's
Maybe
high
Bray
praise.
Wyatt, but
So to have the total WWE experience, you watch Raw, SmackDown, the pay-per-views, and these reality TV shows.
I don't watch the reality TV shows, Jamie.
Like,
I don't watch
I
Total
would
Divas,
not
Jamie.
watch that, Jamie.
That's like a chick thing. I don't watch that.
Yeah, no, your wife gives you the Cliff Notes version.
Oh, you can't forget watching NXT. I mean,
of course not.
if you want the real good in-ring stuff, you got to watch NXT. Snobby. Pinky up.
Snobby with wrestling.
Pinky up. Pinky up. That's where the good wrestling is on NXT. How about gonna dig back into the Wayback Machine a little bit.
The way back machine
The-
and long, long ago.
So the long time ago. Because I'll know you watch it now, like an old cartoon from your childhood. You know that you would immediately just pick up and watch.
Well, definitely He-Man and She-Ra.
Oh, hell,
All those
heck
old Filmation
they're on
cartoons.
Netflix right now?
Nice.
Yeah, they're on Netflix right now.
He-Man and She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword.
I saw that in the
Oh,
theater
yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Lucky
multiple times.
for the honor of love.
Damn. Did it again.
We were talking about 80s cartoons. I can definitely lump
Yes.
the
Yep, the
Transformers in with that.
That's not really bad though.
The
I bet you
80s
if I watched
cartoon
it now, if I watched it now, I would probably be disappointed.
Well, you know, the comic books we grew up reading weren't the highest literature.
That's true.
I mean, the IDW comics are really great.
But I love the Marvel Transformers comics.
Yep.
They were wonderful.
Where they had a crossover with the Transformers in the Marvel Universe.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, because it was written by Marvel, so like in the first 4-issue series that they did for the Transformers, like in issue number 3, Spider-Man shows up. You know, and occasionally you'd have some little crossover now and again. But no, I actually really liked the Transformers comics from the 80s. Those were really cool. I remember, you know, walking my little butt down to Alley Cat Comics on Main Street in Hyannis, getting my Transformers comic book. Yeah, no. And they did a cool crossover with G.I. Joe, because the G.I. Joe comic was running at the same time. And they did a G.I. Joe versus Transformers comic book series, 4 issues.
Of course.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, see, this was a shared universe before the Marvel
Yeah,
Cinematic
right. That's
Universe.
true. That's right. Yeah. Well, comics have always done that, though. But there, you know, there's some bad comics out there. But you still like them sometimes.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
Actually, to bring it back to the Showa Godzilla movies, those were an expanded universe too, because you would start off with a movie focusing on one monster, one kaiju, Godzilla, and then you would have a movie about Mothra, and then you would have a movie about
And then you
Rodan, and then you would have movies with all of them.
monsters.
Yeah, right. So Marvel had a Godzilla comic book, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
I think it was Marvel. And then not too long ago, they somebody did another one. They did this Godzilla in Hell or something like that comic. It was pretty intense. It was pretty cool though. Any book series or books that that are out there that people might give you a little side eye? Catch you reading it.
I think Maxie's got a good one.
Yeah. Flowers in the Attic.
Oh.
I love that book.
So creepy.
They made, yes, I know, that's the point though. It's Gothic literature that has to deal with questionable themes. And they made I know. And they made a wonderful adaptation of it on Lifetime, surprisly, because the 80s version with Christy Swanson was really not that close to the book. And Ellen Burstyn.
Because it would have been super creepy.
It would have, but they did a really good one with Lifetime.
Which kept all the creep?
Yeah, they kept the creep.
Yeah.
There weren't like explicit scenes, but it's like,
We know what happened.
You know what happened.
We know what happened.
They're still kissing siblings. And
all right,
but
all
still, that's what it's about.
Why do you always insist on bringing up this topic?
Bad puns.
Because, it's so good.
We will not have these kind of bad puns on my show.
Not
I'm
on
so
my
sorry.
watch, sir.
Not on my
Not
watch.
on my watch. Ellen Burstyn's performance was wonderful, and I think she actually won an Emmy for it, or she was Emmy nominated for playing the grandmother in Flowers in the Attic. So it's not just like awful or anything. It's like legit.
I don't think it's
Critically
really
acclaimed.
It is, yes.
I don't think
And they
it's-
actually Lifetime made adapted all the books.
Oh.
They weren't that good.
So there
as
were
the
like a
first
lot
one.
of them with all this weirdness.
the Flowers in the Attic series. I think there's 4.
No, you could
4 of
expand
them?
on that. I mean, how much can you?
And then
What's
they're
more to
prequels.
be said?
There's a prequel book. Well, because the first one is when they're teenagers, and then they make it out of the attic, and then they like deal with life
they make out in the
post-attic.
attic. I mean,
They do post-attic, and then like the brother and sister like get married. They like move away, and they actually get married.
Arkansas. All right.
Well, they lie in public that they're siblings,
Right.
and then like I think in one of the books, their children goes awry, and they're
because
they're product of incest. So there's all kinds of
all right.
creepy things.
I'm done with that.
You can't stifle Flowers in the
Yes,
Attic.
I can.
No, you.
Let's move on to better material like Game of Thrones.
Ooh, that doesn't
Wait.
have incest
No,
at
all
all.
right. No.
My word. Why don't we just talk about Crimson Peak too?
I was going to say that it's not necessarily a guilty pleasure because it was popular, but for more books, just the D&D books from back in the 80s, the Dragonlance series and the Forgotten Realms stuff.
Again, not high literature, not
no,
exactly Tolkien, but
no,
it was
it's
fun.
not. Yeah, but it was good stuff. I mean,
It
I
featured
enjoyed
monsters and scenarios that were part of the role-playing game.
You're right, yeah. And then one of the fun things about like the original Dragonlance Chronicles series is because they were writing it as they were writing the game modules. So like for the first part of that book, it had to like match up and mirror what was going on in the modules. So it was written and played out like a D&D module in a game. So you had like the parties doing all that stuff, and eventually they got to a point where they could split it off and actually like became literature, but not like just mirroring the game. So, but I enjoyed all that stuff. The R.A. Salvatore Dark Elf books, which now get, everyone's read them, and they'll poo-poo them in public, but they know they loved it.
Because they're guilty pleasures.
Exactly. Wrapping this back around just a bit, just to kind of put a little bow on it. Is there anything from the grab bag of guilty pleasures that we may have missed? Anything you want to get out?
Are there any music, any songs or bands that
Ooh.
you don't want to
All
admit
right.
that you
All right.
actually like?
Any pop songs?
Running at
Pop
the,
songs.
We're running at the end, so let's get them out.
Okay, early 2000s boy bands. I mean, I was a huge NSYNC fan, but also Backstreet Boys, and I also loved girl groups like Dream.
Yeah, any music, Jamie?
Well, I guess I'm primarily a metalhead, so like any pop bands that I listen to when they come on the radio or whatever is a guilty pleasure for me. So I would say like Taylor Swift or Shakira. It's just catchy. It's designed to be catchy, and I'm.
Allow me to mark off my thunder stolen.
Oh.
What, Shakira?
No.
Taylor Swift?
Little T-swizzle.
There's nothing wrong with liking Taste, right?
No shame in that.
No
She-
shame. No shame.
No shame. Not shaming anybody here.
She's quite popular.
She is quite popular. Do you like Jewel?
I love you.
Oh.
She's a great yodeler.
I bet she is.
YouTube when she was at Lilith Fair,
Mm.
and she sings with the Indigo Girls, and she goes on like a whole yodeling thing, and I deeply appreciate that.
And I mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
For my musical guilty pleasure, I kind of put it in my intro,
You
but
spit the out.
but I'll say it again. I have a thing for musical theater. Pippin or Phantom of the Opera.
Well,
They
that's
sang
how you-
Jesus Christ Superstar.
We-
You know, technically it's a rock opera.
It's a rock opera,
but
and we sang it in that. We sang it at the Chinese restaurant. We sat there
did.
and sang almost the whole darn
It's
thing.
great music. Andrew Lloyd Webber
It's
and
wonderful.
Tim Rice, right? They wrote that when they were 21.
Yeah. Well,
Your love of musicals is how you relate to your liberal friends.
that's right, because that's all we have in common.
That's the one thing we've got.
It's the one thing we've got. All right, well, it's time, unfortunately, my friends,
It's that time.
to say goodbye to all of you. So, to the one viewer we have,
Yes.
thank you for watching OCDTV. I am Keith Martin, Jameson Horton, Maxie Davidson, and stay awesome.